I'm Christopher Schoenwald, and welcome to Life as a show intently focused on helping people find their professional pathway by exploring and unearthing the details of jobs from around the world. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to throw this out there. I have a channel over on YouTube, Life as a ... which basically hosts highlights from these audio conversations that I have with these great guests. They typically run 10 to 15 minutes, and they're there to kind of present a different vantage point. You know, for people that aren't into audio, aren't into podcasts, but are still looking for career advice, ideas, help, all that great stuff, send them over to YouTube. Like I said, Life as a ... And if you do get over there, I would love that like or subscribe. I mean, it's the best way to let that algorithm know that the content is worth sharing and should be out there. So anyway, I do thank you for letting me plug this a little bit, but I think it's about time to get into today's episode. No doubt, a compelling element about the modern working world is the pace at which it continues to reinvent itself. The hyper-specialization of skills, abilities, and knowledge is either eliminating old jobs, creating new ones, or even both. Well, in today's episode, we're going to look at one job which has grown in scope and importance to the point of it basically cannibalizing a similar top position in many companies. Now, what I'm referring to here is the role of a Chief Growth Officer, aka CGO. And companies like McDonald's actually replaced their CMO, their Chief Marketing Officer, with a CGO not too long ago. Other powerhouse firms such as Hershey's and Kellogg's have also appointed such individuals. In fact, many Fortune 500 companies have CGOs, but no CMOs. Now, if you're drawing a blank about what a CGO position is all about, or have aspirations of working your way up to C-suite positions, you need to lean in and listen to this week's guest as he breaks down this career option for you. Okay, well, I think it is about time to jump into things, so let me fill you in on our guest's exceptional background and we can get started. Adam Pines is the Chief Growth Officer at SureCo, the leading benefits administration company specializing in individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements, or ICHRAs. He's an Emmy Award-winning journalist turned strategy executive and policy driver who has developed high-impact strategies that build brands, shape narratives, and define new markets. Now, passionate about telling meaningful stories that make an impact, Pines began his career as a journalist, producing long-form international content at Al Jazeera, where his work as acting Jerusalem bureau chief earned him an International Emmy Award for news. Now, Adam went on to earn his MBA from Harvard and carved out a name for himself as a strategy and growth-focused marketing leader, known for leveling up commercial operations at fast-growing organizations. He's a battle-tested marketing executive who has held leadership positions for companies like Bridgewater Associates, AOL, and Time, where he's led strategy, growth, and revenue operations. At SureCo, Adam is bridging his journalistic background with his decades of growth-driving experience to shape critical healthcare policy. Committed to delivering effective healthcare coverage solutions for working Americans, he's leading campaigns that tell the troubled story of the current employer health insurance landscape and how SureCo is writing a better one. Now, Adam himself frequently speaks on category creation, brand invigoration, the localization of brand content and messaging, and people-centric healthcare communications. So with all this noted, I'd like to welcome you to my conversation with Adam Pines. Yeah, so welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this conversation, Adam. You know, your background, which we're going to get into, is something that's really quite intriguing. And I'm really, keen to learn more about it myself, but then also share this journey, with listeners as well. So really interested in this conversation and looking forward to it.
Well, I love this direction, so I appreciate you having me on.
I do have this first segment lined up for us today. It's something called Coloring Wikipedia. As my listeners know, it's a segment where I just read off a definition of something related to the guest. And I put you down here for your position title, Chief Growth Officer. Now, unfortunately, Wikipedia didn't actually have an entry for this, which was a bit surprising. But I did a little internet sleuthing, and I came up with this definition coming by way of Northwest Executive Education. So let me just read that off, and then perhaps you could comment. Does that sound okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so here we go. Chief Growth Officer. A Chief Growth Officer is a senior executive responsible for developing and executing strategies to fuel the company's expansion. While the title may vary between organizations, the essence of the role remains consistent. A CGO is primarily focused on identifying and capitalizing on growth opportunities, whether through expanding existing revenue streams, entering new markets, or innovating products and services. There we go. A fairly broad and general look at it, I would think, but all the same, what would you say that initial reactions to that?
I mean, that is accurate, but there's obviously more texture and more color to your point.
Yeah.
I think the role growth and the term growth in an organization has sort of shifted. And I think in the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's really come into the spotlight. I started in growth roles before that. So I've sort of been witnessing the evolution. I think in your definition and in the way I feel I inhabit the role, it's really about the art and the science. And it's around finding opportunities for accelerating growth of the organization across the different touch points that it has with its commercial audience, its brand audience, its partners, its investors. It's really identifying ways to increase share of representation. And so that has a number of different avenues. I think in recent years, there's a very heavy quantitative emphasis on growth, which I think is valid, but it all comes down to you can't do one thing in isolation. And when you're really looking to expand a business, you've got to have both sides of the mind, the left and the right brain, both sides of your capabilities, the art, the science, the heart, and the mind. And I think that's what is the difference between an impactful growth officer versus someone who's part of a set of functions and taking one piece of it. I think anytime you want to move a boulder up the hill, you're not just going to use one arm.
Yeah. I like that.
And I can give more texture into that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that holistic look at it all. And also like that element of vision to it. I think that's a big one. I think that was what was coming across to me, at least, is like pulling all of these elements of the business together, but still having this look down the road and how all of this fits together and how you can push it in this direction, or not push, maybe that's not the right word, but like guide it towards whatever strategic goals that you have or the company has.
Absolutely. And we all know that when you are building a company, when you're putting on a product, when you're launching an initiative, the reception from the community, different people perceive things differently. And so as you look to gain more engagement and awareness, you have to speak differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like you go into a party, you're going to introduce yourself to different people differently based on how they're going to introduce themselves. Similarly, you can't just be one note, and being able to listen, react, tailor is kind of what growth is all about.
Yeah, I like that. There we go. I mean, we're bringing this role to life there. Like these are things that certainly aren't embedded within that definition, but we're getting to the essence of it. And yeah,
absolutely. And I do think though that growth sort of became this middle ground between product and an extension to marketing. I sit in my current org on the sort of marketing department, and growth is a part of that. I think that where growth has really emerged in recent years is that data-driven, quantitative approach to enhancing business opportunities and value. And so I think it's a great complement for marketers who have traditionally thought of let's do a campaign, let's put something out that's very brand focused. It adds that element of measurement. It's a listening component that is really powerful.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, this day and age, we're going to get into this later with technology and obviously with AI and all the added insights that's providing now, or has the opportunity to present down the line. That must be shaping and shifting the way that you potentially go about your business and will be in the years to come. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But before we get into all of that, this might be an opportune time to learn a little bit more about SureCo and where you're working and what you're doing a little bit more deeply. I know I certainly mentioned it off the top, but yeah.
Yeah, so at SureCo, we help large companies provide a different model of health benefits for their employees. We leverage the ACA, which passed in 2010, which was really focused on individuals, not necessarily employers. Over the years, there have been different policies that were passed. And the one that we leverage is one that actually we helped pass in 2019 that allows large employers to offer their teams health insurance on the individual market. Every employee is able to choose the plan that's right for them. And by doing that, employers save on average 20-25% of their overall benefits, which is really compelling in an environment where rates have been growing pretty steadily for the last 30 years and there hasn't really been an alternative. So our value is we help large employers with 250 plus employees up to several thousands, if not over 10,000, assist the market. We have a platform, a set of services that replicates that one-size-fits-all group experience that they're used to, but with that very nuanced customization that enables every employee to choose the plan that's right for them. And the results there are happiness, engagement, cost savings, the whole thing.
Yeah. It must be an interesting role for you. I mean, like the product or the company and its offering by definitions, in essence, is fairly innovative. It's relatively new, right? These ICHRIs, did I get it right? Is that?
ICRA is how it's
okay,
the acronym.
There we go. Yeah, but they're relatively new within the marketplace, right? I mean, that's something.
The policy passed through bipartisan support and through a executive order by President Trump, and then has been maintained by President Biden and only been strengthened by virtue of more employers joining the individual market, seeing the benefits. And so, we're very positive on the momentum and trajectory. The results prove themselves both in terms of employee engagement, happiness, and savings.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I bring that up is, like, again, returning to your role, that must be, an exciting challenge, to say the least. I mean, because you have to, one, educate, you have to tell the story of what this could represent for people. A lot of opportunities there, as I said, I think that's the right word, but then challenge could be attached to it in the sense of, like, you really got to get this right, so it's interpreted the correct way and position it in such a way that it is going to be ultimately successful, for the company. So,
honestly, that's the reason that I was brought on. We did a market research study in January at SureCo that spoke to about 2,000 employers with over 250 employees and asked them what their sentiments were about ICRA. And 42% they said they were actively considering it for the coming year as their new benefit product, which in and of itself is a great statistic.
That's a number.
Shout that from the rooftops. But for it to come into place 4 years after a policy has been in place, I've never seen growth in terms of category awareness to that degree. There's been a lot of interest. Obviously, there's great appetite from companies looking for an alternative solution. But a lot of what I was tasked with when I joined was, how do you prove that this category has authority? How do you strengthen trust? How do you catalyze network effects? All those things that, you start having to build a strategy. And a lot of that is back to your definition of growth. It's you gotta use every tool you have, and you can't just charge down one direction.
Yeah, I like that. I'm sure we're going to get into this a little bit further on, but maybe we could return to the nuts and bolts in terms of, like, what you're doing, and have this segment a day in the life. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, what does this mean? Because we've been talking kind of big picture about your role, to this point, but what does a day look like for you? I'm sure it varies, but all the same.
Yeah, a typical day. So our strength at SureCo on the marketing growth side has been very much in articulating the value of this category to our potential customers. So obviously you start and you profile, like, what is your target customer? Where are they based? What are some other indicators? And then, okay, you've got perfectly crafted sort of like bullseye target. You've got a group of companies there. Then what do you do? And so the strategy that I put in place together with my team, my colleagues, I believe in very flat organizations, because that way you don't have as many blind spots. You can have open conversations. Is we want to talk about very top of funnel, broad awareness. So it's PR. It is content marketing from reports about the industry, case studies, all the way down to then how do you operationalize the funnel? What are the emails? What is the user journey? What does social look like? How do you use the assets of your company? How do you bring in product? And then all the way down, how do you start supporting your sales team and really pulling that through the motions so that you shorten your sales cycle? So a lot of my day is focused on, those broad 3 steps of the funnel. What are we doing for top of funnel engagement? How do we make sure we're targeting the right companies, the right audiences, the right individuals at those companies through, if it's PR, are we doing trade publications like endemic health insurance industry publications? Or are we going broader and telling a consumer story? So a lot of conversations there, figuring that out. Then what are the stories we can tell and what do we have to pull from in order to tell? Are we going to pull from our existing customer stories, impact that we've delivered, or are we going to try to step outside of our walled garden and look broadly at the market through a consumer research study? And then is that an article? Is that a report? Is that a case study? Those are the kind of conversations we have on a daily basis. And then obviously, if we take it further down to sort of sales enablement support, it's how do we understand the problems and consistent patterns in the buying process that we can support through a bench of customers and their employees who are going to speak on our behalf to new customers, creating new content, understanding patterns and problems that are emerging, and really pulling that together. And so I think to sum it up, my day looks kind of like, where are we? Are we starting a project? Are we in the middle and have to land it? Did we deploy a project and then have to see how we tailor this? Or if it's a slam dunk, how do we repeat it? Or shout it from the rooftop?
Right.
We have a small team. Very much our mandate is to do less and do it well. And so we think critically about, even if it's a 600-word article, blog post, who are we calling on? What stats are we leveraging? Who are we linking in that article? Everything matters, especially in a space like ours where it's a new category. I have a myriad of examples. I can give one right now, but like the places where you think you will find gold as a marketer or growth leader are not often, and in fact, seldom the places where you'll actually find the value. You got to dig deeper. You got to look below the assumptions. The first reaction will always be, nah, we've tried that. That didn't work. Well, how'd you try it? To whom? Look at the data. Look at the metrics. Dig. Triangulate. Ask someone else. Ask the opinion of somebody on the other side of the org who has nothing to do with your day-to-day function, and say, hey, you're talking to the customers on a daily basis. What do you think of this web page? And 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh, it's really pretty, but it's not. They don't talk like this. They don't want to hear that. And there's like 2 perspectives on growth and marketing. There's one side that's sort of like they are targeted, sharp executors. And the other view of marketers is a connective tissue across the org that sort of listens, learns, accelerates business processes, accelerates sales, accelerates engagement. And I think that's the perspective that I've taken, as how do we help and how do we support as much as possible in order to not only accelerate outcomes, but also learn.
I like that. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack, certainly. One of the first things that came across was that it's a very broad sort of mandate that seems like you would have. Like you're involved with a lot of different things. And I'm guessing here that, putting your fingers into all these different areas, you must add a certain variety to the work and maybe challenge at points, but also a lot of fulfillment, I'm guessing as well, in the sense of like you're accomplishing a lot. You're involved in different things. You're constantly using left brain, right brain, and drawing on different types of skills and abilities within your own repertoire of what you're capable of doing. I mean, that must be, an engaging aspect of the work itself. But then also too, I like
certainly.
Yeah. And then there's also the point that you just raised towards the end there was your kind of vision of what your position represents, at least on the marketing side. I think it's easy for a lot of people to consider their work, their specialty in a silo within an organization, and that's where it remains. But the truth is, I mean, the ones who are successful at doing whatever they're involved in look beyond that. I really like that metaphor of the work marketing being this connective tissue within an organization and going in and digging deeper, speaking to people within the organization, getting their feedback, digging in, looking at the numbers, the metrics a little bit more deeply, and then kind of pulling things together in that sense. I think that's a secret right there. Like that's an insight that can really help a lot of people when they're trying to interpret or make sense of.
I'll give you a nugget off of that. So when I joined, about 6 or 7 months into being there, I brought on a partner who was head of content marketing, did an incredible job at telling stories and sort of established a baseline for what we put out into the market. And then realized that our operations and customer service side of the business really needed help. And in the sense of like, how do you tell the story? How do you evangelize when you're talking to a customer, what the impact is, not only for their HR team, their finance team, but also the employees. And so together we went over through that side of the business, really embedded in onboarding and customer conversations, and found a way to, more succinctly hit on the basket of problems that we were hearing from customers. And that really helped accelerate deal closure, plus turned around to like a 6x increase in the number of customers who were referring other customers. And like that's the first time that as running marketing, running growth, I have, spent that much time in another org, but found that there was more opportunity there in that quarter, that half year, than more blogs, more PR. And so you'll find opportunity everywhere. Just have to listen and park your ego.
Yeah. There you go. I love that. Well, this might be a good chance to learn a little bit more about your background. This is something that I introduced off the top. I'd like to step in this segment here, pathways. And, again, your background kind of speaks for itself. The experiences are rather unique and in my mind, quite compelling. And I'll just, as a refresher for listeners here, I mean, you began your career as a journalist producing long-form international content at Al Jazeera. There, you're working as an acting Jerusalem bureau chief, and you actually earned an international Emmy for your work. Mm-hmm. Now, I've been dying to ask, how that experience connects up to what you're doing now. Maybe you could connect the dots up, for us all here.
So I started in journalism when I was 21. I didn't know what in God's name I was doing, but it seemed fun. I also did like some little music videos in the background. I was just trying things out. And I think the best thing that I did early on in my career is professionally have fun, or find a way to add a professional lens to having fun.
Yeah.
I'm a person who I have dyslexia, ADHD. I graduated high school with a D+ average. Like doing well in school did not come first for me. And over time found a way that by helping other people tell their story as a journalist, I found my ability to tell my story. And that kind of became a skill and a strength. Again, helping other people tell their story teaches you about how to tell a story, and then someone who was like a little challenged on how do you connect with people through stories. That was a very foundational experience that I've taken throughout my career. When you know how to connect with people, when you know how to listen, when you hear the different ways in which people express themselves, you can then, and I have taken that throughout my career to being able to connect really quickly, being able to listen, being able to build buy-in. Like I'm half Israeli, which is challenging in these days. Being the only Jewish Israeli at Al Jazeera in Israel, Palestine, going to the prime minister and being like, hey, I want to interview you. And then being able to in 30 seconds, craft a question that elicits a response. I take that skill with me now to every action that I have, be it working with our CEO and C-suite, to board members I've worked with, job interviews when I've had them. Being able to listen and have this sort of reciprocal communication is something that I stumbled upon. I never had it growing up, but it came out of this love for shaping stories and taught me how to tell my story and carried on.
There you go.
Sorry if that was meandering.
No. I love that. I mean, that's terrific insight. And I think you put it quite eloquently there in how it's played a role in a lot of the success that you've had across your career. And I understand that you've had, different stops at some rather large organizations and helped drive growth there, and had not only growth, but the marketing side as well. I think Time, AOL, Bridgewater Associates, and again, you had different experiences there. And I'd be curious about your approach to your career and career development. Were there strategic elements of okay, I've developed this skill now based off of the past experiences. Now I need to develop this. Now this company would be a great opportunity to do that. And then maybe once, a few years from there, maybe I can keep going. Was it strategic? Were you approaching your career from a strategic standpoint, or did things just sort of naturally flow? So that's kind of what I'm driving here, if that makes sense.
All the career coaches I've ever worked with have always told me, what's your plan and who do you want to be when you grow up? And I've always written down, I've taken pains, jot it down, and then inevitably the thing that I write is not the thing that I end up doing. The best advice that I have given close friends, anyone who I've spoken with, has always been, think back to the things you really love doing, not in the industry or the geographic location, but what was it in its essence that you love doing? Was it bringing people together? Was it being audacious? Was it doing something that has been people said no to 1,000 times, and somehow you figure out your way into it? That was my experience. I didn't know, I didn't know what I was going to do. And the guideposts along the way have been build things, put things together, assemble projects that have been told before couldn't be done or had negative proof points. That's the kind of stuff that got me excited. I very much like being an early shaper. rather than taking a project that's been pretty well documented, has great success, and shepherding that. There's some people who are great at that. A lot of my best friends, my passion, my excitement, me like working till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning comes from like, how do I shape something new? And so I remember when I joined Al Jazeera, I was given, there was like, this is the early days. They were like, go do a story about rising sea tides, ocean levels in Papua New Guinea. And I got a bag of money in 3 weeks and a camera and was told, go.
Adventure, yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then, like doing like music videos for MTV. I didn't know what I was doing. We just sort of like figured it out. And same with experiences from Bridgewater. Even going to business school was an experience for someone who like barely graduated high school.
Yeah, it was Harvard, right? That's a school. I'm sure that must have been an experience. Yeah.
Yeah. But, amazing. Something that I'd never done before. I didn't know how to think analytically, strategically, in a quantitative manner. I remember the first week of school, I was so proud. Everybody was telling me, oh, wow, you got to Harvard. Amazing. And like day 2, I was there and somebody told me, open up Excel. And I was like, what? What's that?
Quickly humbled.
And I remember looking across the room at a classmate who similarly came from like an international background, more creative, less organized. And we looked at each other like, this is going to be a journey.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that perspective, and it kind of like harkens back to these notions of like reflection and reflective points along one's journey, and really kind of getting in touch, like taking the time to actually do that and understand, what drives you as a human first. And that can kind of become this guiding principle or strategic sort of vision for you and how you approach your career, rather than, like you said earlier, rather than going after like this industry and then this particular company. Stepping away from that and just getting in touch with, again, who you are as a person. That can be the driver, I think, for a lot of people, if you take the time.
The first thing I did was I moved to Israel when I was 21. I met up with some people who I'd been in touch with. We went to kindergarten together. I went to kindergarten in Israel. And they all got into film and media. And I was like, that's cool. How can I help? And they were like, well, we've got this production. We need somebody to help. And so I was like lugging lights and connecting wires. And then I would look at the monitor from time to time and be like, oh, if we shoot from this angle, you get this reaction. If you shoot from this angle, you get that reaction. Oh, if you write the script in this way, a different product comes out. I was like, that's cool. I didn't get paid for that. Like I had my dad drive like equipment from like the equipment store to the set. I slept overnight so nobody would steal things. But like that sense of building something that you feel like you're learning, but it's also cool and interesting and with people who you feel safe around. That was the most important thing because I cut my teeth in a safe and exciting environment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you begin to understand like these are things that you want to seek out if you can, or, in a sense replicate, but then also provide new growth opportunities, for yourself as well. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, maybe we could return to the present here and step into yet another segment. I know we're jumping all over the place, but I'd like to keep this moving. But a Q&A discovery segment. And as a chief growth officer, this position, this role, relatively speaking, I would say, is somewhat new, right? Maybe 5-10 years. It's really come around and it's gained ground. So I'm guessing as such, based off of that, there's a lot of opportunity for individuals in that position to kind of claim ownership of it, within the organization, kind of define the boundaries and then what it really, means to that person and how you can take that role on. Be curious about whether or not that's been the case for you, like having some degree of flexibility as opposed to, say you're stepping into a position as a CFO. I mean, there's a template for that really,
Yeah. I mean, I take that with the maturity of an organization you join. SureCo is a startup, early stage. We're a different animal in that we're bootstrapped and independent. And so we're early on. And what I appreciate about companies that stage, it's a lot more work, but you get a lot more bandwidth. Anyone who comes into early organizations, the role you come into will be a bit wider in scope. And you'll have the ability in that role to say, I'm supposed to write blogs, but actually I'm finding that our emails are off. Or I think social is a really big potential. Let me write blogs, but also do this thing. We don't have anybody who does social. We don't have anybody who does this thing. And so I think I have a preference for earlier stage companies because it's a bit more of a generalist approach. Now, that said, You have to be disciplined. You can't be jumping up all over the place. Part of being in a growth role means that you see through whether something works or not. And oftentimes that result of whether it worked or not is in tandem with the life cycle of a sale, which at a B2B company could be 6, 9, 12, 18 months. So you actually won't know if something worked for, sometimes 18 months. I'm not saying that you should just wait and watch one thing, but part of having multiple initiatives involves being able to see them through end to end. I think that's the part of a growth role that not everybody necessarily pays attention to. You got to make sure you see what happened. Run tons of experiments, do tons of things within different vectors, and then process the results.
Yeah, and I think that appeals to a certain type of individual. I mean, that type of role, that type of responsibility wouldn't be for everyone. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
Somebody who's like into systems and processes and sees things one way,
Correct.
they're going to struggle in a position such as that. Whereas somebody else who enjoys that, who doesn't like being bogged down on the same thing every single day, day in, day out, that would definitely
Absolutely.
be, an appealing aspect to the work.
Yeah, look, I mean, most of my career and professional life, the sense of what to do and whether someone was effective in their role was sort of like, are they good and are they bad? Are they smart? Are they not? When I went to business school, and then actually when I went to Bridgewater afterwards, one of the things that I learned deeply viscerally is that there's two components to how you think about business outcomes in any process. There's what is the process and what are the components needed to deliver that process, both in terms of like technical inputs in the org, but then who's the right person to run that process? And that's not just, are they smart, are they not? That is, can they see through 3 or 4 steps out from different scenarios? Are they empathetic? Are they creative? Are they detail oriented? It's so fine to say you're not detail oriented, because then you find somebody and you work with someone who is. And so I think a lot of choosing the path and choosing what role to be in is going to be most effective when someone thinks, okay, what does it take to have this process and this outcome be done in this organization, in this industry, in this geography with these people? And then am I the person who has that?
Yeah.
And sometimes, yes, the answer is yes or no, but you got to think about it in a very nuanced and granular way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's too many variables.
Yeah. I like that. And I think you just answered, my next question, which is, going to be centered in on some of the things that are important or absolutely critical to doing this job well, that might not necessarily show up on a roles and responsibilities, sort of like, charting of what the job is, technically on paper about. And I think, like you said, you just answered it there. Like that's a critical component.
There's so many ways to think about these. Bridgewater had, when I left, 213 principles for how to understand capability and for like professional personality. That's a radical departure from is somebody smart or not? Are they good at something or bad? That's a 2 by 2. We're talking about like a 213 by 213 rubric that I can't even do that. And so realizing there's more texture to a lot of these decisions.
In terms of, again, returning to what you're doing right now and doing it well, I might add, is, leveraging a lot of your past experiences and skills that you've been accruing, across your career. Maybe you could speak to those points a little bit, like how some of the experiences maybe in the beginning, again, like the journalistic side, like what elements are you drawing upon from that experience, as well as some others to help you in what you're doing presently?
Yeah. In marketing and in growth, the role is really to work through the buyer and the audience's perceptions of what they need. You're evangelizing all the time. And so how do you do that? Do you do that by medium, video, text, social, graphs, etc.? Do you do that by tone? Do you speak in a friendly way? Do you speak in a very analytical way? Do you just show numbers? Understanding who your intended prospect is, and that doesn't necessarily always only have to be the buyer. That could be like the buyer's partner, their like deputy who makes decisions for them, their chief of staff. There's getting into like understanding what is the counsel around the decision maker and what is their sort of like anthropological, sociological, what do they care about? What moves them beyond the logic of like, you should buy this because it's cheaper. You should buy this because, your employees will like you more. There's more to that. And I think what I've learned coming from journalism is how do you tailor voice and platform to the right target. Then it's around what capability do you have to understand the product and the business offering that you have? Can you influence that at all? Can you influence how you position that? That has strategic capabilities, analysis, both internally, but also externally. How does health insurance play in our economic cycle? Who's thinking about that? Is the HR person thinking about that? We're finding right now that CFOs and VPs of finance are getting more involved in decisions around health benefits for their organization because they're so expensive. It's the second or sometimes third largest line item on a P&L. And they've been told for years, leave me alone, go to the HR team. And now when it's coming back to the P&L conversation, they need to hear that logic in a very different way. They need to hear about what's their industry looking like, what's the long-term projection. And so those are places where I bring on my experience working in finance, studying business, but also working across like many different audiences in journalism. I think a lot of it is understanding how do you position your product and what new levers do you have within your product and within your business that you can all of a sudden pull out and position differently to a new audience. It'll be a on-ramp to additional revenue and growth. That was long-winded. I apologize for that. But I think that's the crux of this role is you only have 24 hours a day, and I hope people sleep, ideally 8 hours, 7 hours, whatever you need. What are you going to do the rest of those hours? You're going to eat. You're going to see your friends and your partners. The remaining hours, you got to use them well. You can probably pursue a basket of options effectively. How are you going to make your bet?
Yeah. No, I like that. It brings it all sort of together in a sense, as was what I was gathering there. One of the things that I'm picking up on in the course of the conversation is a certain degree of passion and enthusiasm for the work and for the role, I think, itself, and maybe you could speak briefly to that point, like the level of fulfillment that you personally get from the work that you're involved in.
This is going to sound really cheesy. I get an outsized sense of purpose and day-to-day passion because of my team. And like I said, it's cheesy. Like
I know, but it's real, right? I mean,
it really is. Like waking up every morning and saying, okay, how do I help the org move farther with these people? How do I help accelerate their capability? How do I tap into something that they're not as confident leaning on, but they're actually brilliant at? That is something that is super motivating to me. I'll add another 2 or 3 points. 2 points, because 3s are good. Healthcare in America is broken. I mean, that's like the cliche of the century. It's broken for many reasons. And our position is at SureCo is that it's not connected sufficiently to the individual, at least on the plan and insurance level. And that's what we're really working to do is make individuals, empower them to be able to not only capture the opportunity of controlling their health insurance and their health destiny, but also knowledgeable to make the right decisions. I am continuously inspired by the ability to shape a reality where people are more in the driver's seat of their health. And that is a tactical outcome. And it's a little different than the work I was doing as a journalist. No knock, I'm so proud of the work we did. But I think that there are not many examples where I told a story and the world changed because of it. There's a few. There's definitely a few. But here, I am actively working on a day-to-day basis on changing the realities on the ground and putting impact into work, into process. And that's really inspiring. The third one is sort of in the middle. I'm really excited about category creation. There's not, the individual market was not built, hasn't been tailored to employers. And so being able to shape that narrative, shape that discussion is exciting.
Yeah. How can it not be? I mean, I'm getting notions of like empowerment and being associated with that, whether it's personally within your organization, others, how you led off that answering that question, some of the people that you're working with. But then also too, like by definition, that the product or service offering that your company is built upon is empowerment for others. It doesn't get much bigger than health, right? And affecting someone's health. That shifts and changes somebody's entire life trajectory, or it can, certainly, right? So, I mean, I can see how all those things connect up.
There's a person on my team that we always joke that we spend more time together with our partners. That's true. Like if you're passionate, if you're really moving the needle, if you're making an impact, you're going to spend more time with these people. And so, the cliche from business school was like, if you're stuck on an airplane on a runway for 4 hours, you want to have a conversation with the person next to you. The flip side of that is you're going to live with them more than with your family. You gotta have like a rhythm. They're not your family. I don't believe in that. There's a lot of like cliches around co-working environments or families. I think that that's the wrong line. But it's a functioning, strong community, and if you're on that rhythm, it feels seamless.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we'd step into this other segment here, water cooler story. And here I invite guests to indulge listeners with a story related to their work. And I'd love to hear what you have for us today.
I'll tell a story that's sort of related to one of the earlier points you asked me of like, where do you look in the, and I brought up the example of when our team connected with the operations and customer success side of our business. One of the biggest worries around health insurance is because it is a government mandated requirement for employers to provide it to teams of more than 35 employees. If they don't do it well, they get penalized, and those penalties can be really expensive. In a new category of health insurance, there's this like latent question of like, oh, what do I do for compliance? Now, when I heard the word compliance, I was like, oh, well, I don't know if that's the most exciting thing. I had a conversation with my colleague, and she said, I think we need to do a webinar and then a report on what is compliance in this new space. What does it look like? It was a blockbuster. The webinar, it was like, we talk about it, it's like the Super Bowl of compliance. It was. We did it with one of the largest industry partners. We had lawyers and customers and strategists on. We hit a nerve with this anxiety around, am I going to be compliant? Am I going to be responsible when my company gets a $1, $2, $3 million penalty? And we wouldn't have known about it until we had the conversation, spoke with people. We wrote the book on compliance for ICRA. Nobody did it before. The IRS didn't do it. None of the government divisions did it. None of the other like lobby groups did it. We wrote a nonpartisan guide to how do you do compliance for ICRA. And that's cool.
Yeah.
Like it's fun. We solve problems. We we remove stress from our buyers, and like they're grateful for it.
Yeah. I mean, the amount that you would have been learning through that process. I mean, and there's so many different aspects I'm sure that you're picking up, whether it was, from the people that attended and what they took away from it, and what you guys were picking up in terms of formulating it and putting it together and creating a language, creating a story, creating, a way of like positioning this issue. Yeah, it must have been an exciting process, and the results sort of speak for themselves, it sounds like. Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
It goes back to like, just, you never know where you're going to find value. And the things that you think, the first thought is always based on like what you want. The second thought, if you listen closely enough, is what the world wants.
There you go. Yeah, it's a nice capper on that. I like it. We are rounding the bend in this last segment here, our crystal ball segment. And as the name implies, we're looking to the future, trends, predictions, so on and so forth. And typically on this program, everything is going towards technology and AI. That's, across industries, that's the point of, conversation these days. And certainly, like, you can see how it's shifting and changing things around. I mean, it's this vehicle for growth. It can be a vehicle for growth. We were chatting earlier in the conversation about metrics, and obviously AI offers, an opportunity to look at things a little bit differently, a little bit more efficiently and quickly. Certainly some drawbacks to all of that too. Also, in terms of connecting with customers, helping tell stories, there's a plethora of different examples here. But from somebody like yourself, the vantage point that you're seeing it all in terms of your position, what would you say to this? And how is technology, how is AI in particular shifting and changing your world at the moment?
I think it's impacting everyone's life. I think there's tactical impact, and then there's like emotional impact, which is people are like, oh my God, this is coming. How do I get ready, etc. I think there's a few fundamental rules. There will always be technological innovation, I think, unless we wipe out technology. And the rate of that advancement will continue to grow. So new things will happen more often. And so then the question is, what are we doing about it? Are we growing, or are we staying exactly where we want to be, doing the one thing we want to do? I think the future is based on anyone, marketers, growth, being able to gain functional knowledge of a tool quickly. we as professional humans will be judged based on our ability to learn and create functional impact with tools, settings, etc. How quickly do you learn stuff? How quickly can you use them to accelerate your passions, interests, responsibilities? That's my note. And people who shirk it, fine. I think the world is sort of moving in the direction of how do we use things to accelerate. If you don't want to be a part of that, there's tons of people. I have friends who are cooks and artists. They too are leveraging AI and tech, but they're doing it outside of the rhythm of the commercial economy, or a bit more outside of it.
Yeah, it's I think a good way of looking at it.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a good way of looking at it, and it's something that comes up in these conversations time and time again. Is an interesting point is like, how do you sort of define, some of the guardrails for it? Like, where do you want to allow the technology into the workplace, into your workflows, into your rhythms? Because you're right. I think like if you're not, as an organization, as a company, from that perspective, if you're not embracing it, you do run this big risk of being left behind. But then like what's interesting now is like, how much do you give it? How much of the essence of what you're doing remains the same? Whereas like maybe this area, we can kind of like play with it. We can experiment with it. And I think that's the big challenge for a lot of people in organizations and leaders like yourself right now, is trying to define that and figure that out.
Yeah. I think that I have never been in a point in my life when I haven't felt behind the ball. So you got to accept that you're always going to feel that way. And then the question is, what do you do about it? You can either ignore it or say, I don't want to do that, or you can participate. I think that companies and for-profit organizations are all about efficiency, accelerated outcomes, and that's what AI provides. If you want to get ahead in your business, find tools to accelerate your output. That can be AI, it can be social, it could be crowdsourcing, it can be getting really good at anything, writing a piece of content, writing some code, anything. But the AI is the cool new word for produce more outcomes more quickly. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. AI is a great set of tools, and people are building on that. So is blockchain, so is social, so is creator economy. All these things are about how do we get more people producing more value for our world and for our businesses. Do that. Keep an eye on what you're delivering, revenue, engagement, opportunities. You'll be fine. Don't get scared of words. They're just words. It's around what you do with them, the tools, if you like it. And just to bring it back to like the earlier conversation, have fun. If you're not having fun, you're going to be checked out.
I love that. I love that sentiment there. And that might be a nice, point to put a bow on all of this. But Adam, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I can't believe we're, approaching the hour mark here. It feels like we just got started. I can't thank you enough for all your time and insights. Thanks for joining the program.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Now, for those interested in learning more about Adam and his work, you can check him out at SureCo. You can also find him on LinkedIn. And for reference, all this information, including links, will be in the show notes. And hey, if you like today's show, please be sure to tell a friend and share. To show further support, always rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And then lastly, as I mentioned off the top, head on over to YouTube. I do have that channel which hosts highlights from these audio recordings. And if you do make it over there, I would love that like or subscribe. And finally, don't forget to join us on the next episode of Life as A, where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.